Dr. Malina.
Dr. Roger Malina.
Roger Malina. I have 2 PhDs. I'll tell you about that in a second. Malina is not a Latino name. It's from Central Europe.
Okay.
There's a region called Bohemia, where the Bohemians came from,
Yeah.
and I'm one of them. I've been here in this university for 10, 12 years. Are you recording?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Definitely. So you have tenure at this point, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, and I have total academic freedom.
Yes.
Which is ironic that I had to come to Texas to get academic freedom.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's listening, but thank you, Texas, for. So I started off in the physical sciences, physics, astrophysics, worked for space agencies, building telescopes that went into the sky, and if we saw nothing, it was a discovery. If we saw something, it was a discovery. But then, among other things, I stumbled into the publishing business because my father had started a stupid journal. I'll show you a copy in a second, called Leonardo, and it was to publish the work of artists who use science and technology to make art, scientists and engineers that used art to make discoveries. And when it started in 1968, and the first joke was, if you tried to show art that involved a plug in a gallery or a museum, they said, if you have to plug it in, it isn't art.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 1968. Well, now if you can't plug it in, it's not
art.
art.
I like the setup that was in the other room. So I saw the old video camera.
Yeah.
Then I saw the big lamp TV.
Yeah.
So what's that about?
So that gets into media archaeology.
Okay.
And Balsamo and her team. So when I first met her in the 1980s, she was at Xerox PARC. And they did some of the first use of computer screens for other things than calculating.
Wow. Yeah. So actual art, video games, programming.
And there, part of my narrative is if you want to publish something so your grandchildren can share it, don't use digital media.
Yeah.
Because nothing that's up there now you can make sure will be there 50 years from
copy.
Well, the big companies pay to keep updating it and refiling it, but 99% of online content will be gone before your grandchildren get a chance to look at it. The whole discussion has changed over the centuries. I was still a scientist. I lived in France, so I have this transcultural background.
Definitely. That'll help.
I spent a lot of time visiting Africa, Turkey, Lebanon, and so you kind of learn that yes, some scientific truths may be universal,
right,
but almost nothing else is.
If you can back it up with facts, it might be universal.
And my aha moment is a podcast platform that I mentioned. The idea was to talk about how bringing the arts and sciences together, or arts and engineering on difficult problems, was a good idea. And I was teaching in Colombia, South America, and I had a student, and he said, "Oh yeah, I come from the mountaintops in Colombia. We're an indigenous people. We have 80,000 people that still speak the language." And I said, "Wow, could you record a podcast in your commune's language?" He said, "Yeah, of course. Just pay for my bus ticket." So I paid for his bus ticket, and he went home. And then he came back and he said, "Professor, I'm going to have to give you my bus ticket back." I started discussing this with my commune, and they said, "We don't divide knowledge up into art, science, technology, medicine, law. It doesn't make sense to us. So bring them together again it's just not it's not even a question in our culture." And then if you look up the history of the tree of knowledge, with the arts, the performing arts, the digital arts, the way we break up knowledge in our particular cultures, there's no scientific proof. It's an accident of history.
That's what I'm learning more, like as being in Toronto, there's a big indigenous community,
Yeah.
lots of different nations. and so I'm learning kind of like about their ways of knowing.
Yeah.
Right. So the traditional or the ways that Western society has like their theories and philosophies of like education is totally different.
Yeah.
So I'm having conversations with different indigenous people, and I'm like, well, how do you value higher education?
Hey, come on in.
Do you value higher education, like versus your traditional ways of knowing? So
Okay,
it's
Carlos,
kind
I
of
have bad news for you. I have bad news for you.
They're never bad news.
You're being recorded.
Yes.
No.
Oh.
no,
That's all right. Come on in.
No, come on in. Come and sit on the table.
So here.
No, come and sit on the
Let's
table.
scoot by. Yeah, hop in this.
All right. So, I
what do
just
you
need
do,
to
Mr.
find
Carlos?
the tag. Oh, how are you, sir?
Oh, nice to meet
I'm
you.
Carlos. So, as you can tell, it's brand new.
Okay, I'll come back to you. No, but seriously, can
Yeah, I can scoot
so
over in the middle.
he's interviewing me, and I'd like him to interview you.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
sit
come
down.
sit down. Oh, but I gotta
In a
go.
rush?
Yeah, you gotta go, but
Yes. Yes.
okay. So, what one question would you like to ask him?
So, what is your profession? What is your skill set?
I specialize in customer service. That's
Okay.
my my expertise.
Definitely customer service.
Correct. Other than I work with people, not computers.
Yeah. Hey, no, that's the thing. People are never going out of business, you know.
True,
So,
But on the job, I handle all services or requests from faculty and staff members, all
Definitely.
related to PCs, computers, Macs.
so you're a tech guy.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So this is my first time being in the building. So I think I remember it's called the Harry S. Bass Jr. building for
We
science.
change names
and-
every 3
yeah,
months.
I just saw it said the sign. It said 2023. So I'm like, what was it called before?
If you donate like $3 million to the
They'll name it after you too.
Well, no, so this lab is the Edith O'Donnell
Edith
lab.
O'Donnell
And the
lab,
building
okay.
used to be the Edith O'Donnell. She was a rich Texas billionaire woman, but she'd gone in university to art school, and she felt her husband was an oil engineer, and she felt engineers didn't understand the arts enough.
Yeah.
And so she funded this lab.
Passion project.
Yeah.
Those are good.
Passion, yeah. But I think also a way of addressing her own anxieties. You know, that is the world getting better thanks to higher education?
That's one thing I was reading, and it was saying that, you know, so many people are getting into psychology. So many people are getting into these niche, different areas of education, and not so many people are going into like STEM, as it should be. So how do you feel about
You
that?
have to be a little bit careful. Anyway, so Carlos, thank you for dropping by. I'll come and sue you if it doesn't work. I have the charger here, so I'll
charge
charge
it
it.
and log in, please.
And
I'll
nice
come
to meet
back
you,
with a
Carlos.
tag.
With a what?
Oh, you're fine.
With the asset tag.
Ah,
They had to
okay.
replace the bottom part. There's no UTD tag.
Well, and I think it was my fault, but don't tell your boss. 'Cause I think I may have spilled some coffee on the keyboard.
Dale knows it. Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Anyway, so this idea of you talked about ways of knowing or something. So in Colombia, South America, they explained to me that we all think we divide knowledge sometimes, not always, into local knowledge and distant knowledge. So if you're a coffee grower in Colombia, you know that coffee grows really well on that hillside, but not very well on that one. Well, if you live 100 miles away, you don't need that knowledge.
Right. So it's specific to the area.
Well, you know, some things, yeah, you know, if you trip, you fall anywhere.
Right.
You know, they wouldn't argue with that. But then, you know, should you really teach people local knowledge more than distant knowledge? And the other one, which I'm particularly sort of looking into right now, is recent knowledge versus ancient knowledge.
Yeah.
And there, you know, surprise, surprise, if you ride a horse or a bicycle, your carbon footprint is lower than if you drive a Jeep.
Oh, no brainer.
But we don't design cities anymore so that you can bicycle to work or ride a horse to work, which, you know, certainly.
That's one thing that I'm learning about the city of Toronto is that, especially the downtown area, they have a lot of bike lanes, and so that's like one thing that I was reading about before I moved. A lot of the people that have been there for a long time, they're complaining. They're like, okay, why are there so many bike lanes and the sidewalks getting wider because they're trying to make it a walking, biking city and trying to really
just in
limit
Montreal over New Year's. So,
that's awesome.
And so same observation. They have a lot of walking streets. Yeah, the trucks can still down if they need to. But if you're just going shopping, for Christ's sakes, don't drive right in front of the shop. Park and park in the parking lot and walk there.
That's one thing that's really different from Texas because I'm used to driving here, but I didn't take my car
Were
with
you
me.
born in Texas? Or?
So I was born in North Carolina, but then I got here as fast as I could, pretty much, and then I grew up in Texas, and so ever since about 16, I've had a car, and I didn't really take public transportation. We don't have like a lot of trains in Austin. Dallas has some trains.
Actually, my parents, my parents were in the British and American Army, so I was born in France.
Oh wow!
In Paris, and they actually taught me how to hitchhike. Well, now
I don't want to do that anymore. That was a real thing back then.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you wanted to go somewhere and someone did have an empty seat in the car, they'd stop and take everybody there, and you'd give them a candy or something. And, so,
safer world back then.
And so, you know, part of the, you know, this is a research lab. We're supposed to be innovative, and I think we also need to be ingenious.
Yeah.
So ingenious means using old ideas now that we've forgotten how to use, or ideas that make sense there. If we just move them here, they make sense here too. And we're so focused on high-tech innovation that we forget the social innovation.
People matter.
Well, and so surprise, surprise, the biggest businesses online are the sex trade and the drug trade. I was part of the generation that built the internet. We could have
Silk
predicted
Road's
that.
not going anywhere.
We could have predicted that, so why didn't we put in some mechanisms so that you weren't always being fished to buy drugs that pretend to be something?
So when I came into Dallas driving from Austin, I saw a big billboard and it said fentanyl kills.
Yeah.
And I was surprised. I'm like, we know this, but the numbers that we're seeing, like the different drugs that are like laced with fentanyl and the deaths that are occurring at such a high rate, like in Canada, marijuana's legal, and different drugs are like decriminalized, right? And so to many, they're saying that that's helping their society, right? Because they don't have to worry about drugs being laced.
Yeah.
Now that's where the addiction questions come in for certain drugs, because
in the behavioral psychology.
Yeah.
One of the jokes I like to say is that the drug trade is one of the most innovative drug trades and has been in all of human history. They call them the Silk Road.
Yeah.
Were they just carrying silk?
Definitely not. Yeah.
And now, if you do a little bit of research, you know that the best groups in the drug trade are using drones, and when it lands, you don't know where it came from, you don't know who sent it, you don't know who to arrest. Oh, you landed in my garden by mistake. What do you mean? Did you order it online? No.
You know, that's actually the truth. That's hilarious, because have you seen, what's the new movie where the drones are dropping off signs on each side of the country, and I can't think of the name of the movie, but basically it was kind of a constructed warfare, and it was set up by like these higher powers to like just create confusion. So like you were saying about the drones and the drug delivery, that's like a next level sophistication. So I'm sure they're gonna have to go into the actual system of the drone and try to backtrack like where it came from.
How do you deliver drugs in the metaverse?
I don't even want to know.
Well, I'm sure they're working on it.
Well, yeah, I can't even think into that, because like, how do you actually get the source?
Well, when you're in a group of people in the metaverse, can you hand someone a joint to smoke?
Not physically, right?
Well, we don't
Not
know
yet.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our lab here is called the Art Science Lab, for lack of a better thing, which is just bringing different ways of knowing together on difficult problems.
I like that.
And the difficult problem we're working on right now, my colleague Catherine Evans, who co-directs this lab, she used to be a professional opera singer and now teaches music, science, and technology. But she's working with a cancer doctor at UT Southwestern.
Wow.
And the problem he came to this lab with, he said, my problem is if your people are diagnosed with cancer, they keep phoning up my office and wanting another appointment because they're not feeling well. Yeah. And we keep selling them all these leaflets and booklets, but they keep Googling online and getting the wrong advice.
Self-diagnosing.
Well, self-diagnosing, you know, where you misspell one word and then, you know, you're going to die immediately if you don't do this. So Catherine is working with the members of our lab team, developing, well, part of it is game development. So normally if you're diagnosed with cancer, which I haven't, the people around you get concerned and try and help. So the idea is you and the other people are playing a game to address your anxiety and so on. And often the people around you notice things about you you don't notice about yourself. Yeah. So the gamification is, you know, is Roger limping today? Yes, yes, yes. And I say no, no, no. But you know, there's an example where the medical industry has been overtaken by the internet, and no, you know, every time you feel sleepy and you have cancer, a good night's sleep or a nap isn't going to help. It's called cancer fatigue. It's caused by other things than lack of sleep. But then, you know, you have to be careful not to misdiagnose also. And so, you know, there's bringing art and science together, gaming and animation together with medical treatment.
I think when it comes to like the singing, different types of music, I think that could, you know, lighten their spirits, make them feel better, you know, get that dopamine going, serotonin going, and that'll actually kind of make them feel better. So I think that could like really contribute to at least making them a little bit more comfortable.
Why do you happen to mention that? No, tell me why you mentioned that.
Because we were talking about how, you know, combining the music with the cancer research. So like, we're obviously trying to solve a problem by incorporating music in that. So I know, like, when I listen to music or when I watch a movie, like I get a certain feeling, right? So like if it's like a scary movie, like I might feel a little tense, right? Or if it's like a love story, then I might feel lighthearted or happy.
Do you play music?
So I don't play music now. I grew up in the band and I played the trumpet.
Okay, hold on a second. My computer's waking up, but anyway,
like
you stumbled on something I wouldn't mind discussing with you, and maybe you can help us on it. So once I can get into, there's YouTube. So one of the, Evan Acuna, whose desk that is the manager of the lab. He graduated last year. And he came up with a stupid project that cost us nothing except minds. Okay, here we go. So what he did is, and let's just stand up. Well, you can probably hear us still. Go to the door. Okay. So what he did, he started asking people who walked in door what was music they like to listen to at the moment. And he's up to, I don't know, 100 songs. Yeah. And then he created a playlist on YouTube, which is why I was looking. And, okay, stop it, computer.
Technology.
Okay, so it's called Okay, just bear with Sci Lab. And stand. So this is during the last 2 months total, the songs that people in this lab have been listening to.
Once everything's perfectly organized, I'll start working on my thesis.
Once everything's perfectly
Oh,
organized.
sorry.
Yeah. So you said you have 2 PhDs.
Okay, hold on a second.
How do I write the perfect intro?
Okay, I'm just gonna pick one at random. Anyway, so he started doing that, and you know, normally when you ask people to fill out a questionnaire, you get maybe a 10% rate.
Yeah.
He was getting 99% answers from
Because
anybody.
everyone has a favorite song.
Well, you know,
Right.
and they can only think of it like that.
Yeah.
Right? And then we did a little bit of research in developmental psychology, and during the pandemic, people listened to different types of music than they do now.
Yeah.
So there it was stress and anxiety and sickness, and the psychologists have analyzed that carefully, but we couldn't find any psychologists that analyzed how the musical taste of a group of people changed. So we're going to have data on what they wanted. This group of people were listening to last semester, and then this next semester we'll have a second data set, and we're going to compare them.
Yeah.
And you know, it sounds sort of fake, but it, you know, it's been making people in the lab think about, you know, when I turn on the radio, why do I pick that channel and not this one? Well, they're really good. No.
It gives you an addictive feeling. It's like, okay, I want to feel that again.
Or a sense of community sometimes, right? You listen to the same music as your friends or something, or,
Yeah.
you know, especially if you play in a band, which I never have. And so, you know, is this a problem that needs solving in our society? Yes, I think we need to anticipate people's behaviors before they go nuts.
That's for sure.
Well, and I'm, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm working with a few people online, and somehow the pandemic just,
Oh yeah, everyone's been
well, not everyone,
isolated.
some people, well,
Yeah.
they know it was just the loneliness, isolation, and then, oh yeah, I gotta work online, and I don't know how tall someone is when I meet them online, and, you know, should I trust them? And so, I know, anyway, this project isn't costing us anything, except we'll have to find a developmental psychologist to help us
Yeah.
analyze the data. So
Give me a few years.
When you're
I'll
at
come back.
PhD.
Yeah.
Okay, so you asked me a question. So my undergraduate degree was in physics.
Okay.
My PhD was in astrophysics. And then as I mentioned, I got into the publishing industry. And so about 7 years ago, I was awarded a PhD in art.
Wow. So that one's honorary?
I didn't have to pay for it.
Good.
They flew me there. They gave me a cap and gown for free. And, but the university that did that is in Valencia, Spain.
That's awesome.
And so I'm now collaborating with them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sort of funny how these things happen. And you know, one of my jokes is we all have multiple identity syndrome. You know, what's it called?
Yeah, it's where you don't kind of believe that you are who you are. Imposter syndrome?
Well, imposter is no, but having multiple personalities.
Oh.
So, you know, in the science world, the fact that I worked in the art world, oh, how neat. You do that on the weekend, right? Okay? In the art world, they said, oh, you work in the science world, you must do that at night.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got
And
you.
so there was this attitude that I was not a sane person because I was working both in the art world and the science world.
Well, no, you can think with your left and your right brain,
No,
right?
no, okay, as you know, that's a fake,
I know, that's why I said you can quote.
fake metaphor.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor. And when I got the job here in this lab, I'm a professor of physics and a professor of art and humanities. So my resume includes both of them. I get promoted based on my performance in both of them.
Yeah.
And there's a growing number of people who are hybrids. I work with a woman who wrote a book. She's now a PhD at Stanford, I think, where she wrote, the title of the book was not in my title. But
Yeah.
the most important things about someone is often not in their resume.
You know what's so funny? As I'm meeting more doctors, PhDs, MDs, a lot of them don't introduce themselves as doctor. So like I noticed like when we met, you're like, my name is XYZ, no doctor on the title. And I'm like, okay, why is that?
Well, in my family, there were so many doctors that being a doctor didn't put you above the rest.
It was just regular. Yeah.
My mother had a degree in accountancy in the 1930s. My dad had a PhD in aeronautical engineering or something from Caltech. It's okay. So one of the things I just like to vent on. So I don't think I have all my notebooks here. So I was asked to submit an application to keep this lab running for 6 more years. And I'll find out in April whether the university approves it.
So is it like a grant proposal or just
No.
outline of what you'll be
No,
researching?
because I have a tenured position. It costs the university a lot of money. If you're not doing anything with it, they're going to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And if you don't plan to do anything with it, goodbye.
Yeah.
But it sort of said, okay, I've been doing these things for decades. What would I like to focus on next? And
Can you collaborate with other schools?
yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, so what would be something that we could work on together at my school at the University of Toronto?
Okay, so my experience there is we need to stumble on a shared concern or problem. One thing, the technique is to just write a short article together
Okay.
on how we define the problem, how it's being solved right now. And we can do it in multiple ways. One is in a dialogue. So you write a paragraph, I write a paragraph.
Okay.
We read each other's paragraphs and then I write one.
I'm interested in that, like, yeah.
And so you get into, a conversational mode, right?
Right.
So this conversation is going in a direction only because of our interactions, right? I forgot to answer one question and then
Came back to it.
came back to it or whatever. So, I'd love to do that. And one of my colleagues, Catherine Evans says, Roger, you fall in love too easily. So new ideas just, keep popping into the lab and you say, okay, let's work on them.
Yeah.
So then the question is, if you and I started working on this, what would be the benefit to each of us? So I'm not looking for a job right now. I don't want to be admitted to a 3rd PhD program.
Yeah.
But you do.
Yeah.
Now, there the problem is publishing informally is difficult to convince a PhD program.
That's what I've been doing. So I have my website and I've just been putting my things on there
Yeah.
because I haven't figured out like how to get published yet.
Yeah. Well, no. And then, okay, let me just stand up.
Yeah.
No, the narrative I use is we need to work on a micro project.
Okay.
A very small project that doesn't take too long, a few weeks, doesn't cost much money, $50, and demonstrates we can collaborate.
Definitely.
Anyway, this is the journal I was mentioning. You can have that copy.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
This will be awesome.
So the thing is, one thing that can happen from a micro project is we work on something, we get excited, we have some new ideas, we document them and put them online. And then after a certain amount of time, I say, if you need a letter of recommendation for your PhD admission, I'm happy to write one.
Definitely.
Now, if after 6 weeks we've done nothing, I don't think I can write a letter of recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just put in the air. So I'm working with this guy, one guy in Canada, in Montreal. Toronto is not very far away.
Yeah.
His name is Tommy Ayala. And this guy in Bogota, Colombia, Tomas Londoño. And Tomas, when we started having identical discussion, he's going to be coming here this semester for a few months. He introduced me to the idea of smart villages. Have you heard of that?
Yes, there's a lot of celebrities that are talking about doing these different smart villages. So there's like Akon, and I believe he's from Senegal, so he's talking about creating like a currency, these different futuristic concepts about how people are going to travel, about how it's going to be connected. So I think it's a really cool idea.
Okay, so I'd love to work on that topic with you. So the narrative that I've been using to get my colleagues not to think I'm just nuts is when I arrived here in Dallas, it was the smart cities movement. The city of Dallas wanted to make sure every neighborhood had good Wi-Fi so the high-tech companies could move here and people could work online and all that. And then during the pandemic, everybody had to work at home and they had Wi-Fi. So what's the big deal? Well, many families in poor neighborhoods or rural communities, nobody in the family had a laptop.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
What are they going to do with Wi-Fi?
And if there was a cell phone, 3 members of the family were sharing it so they can go to different classes at the same time. And so there's a whole generation of children that missed 2 or 3 years of schooling.
Definitely.
Because they were in neighborhoods where they just couldn't go to school online. And Anu Gowda, who's one of the PhD students in this lab, she's in mid-career, so student always has this ambiguous tone to it. Uneducated, you're just a student, imposter syndrome. But she stumbled on this thing. She's from Bangalore, India, and she lived in a neighborhood which was underserved. And what happened is she discovered that they still had a public library in town. It had excellent Wi-Fi. It had a lawn around it. The weather was good, so the kids could sit on the lawn, socially distanced. And they had stacks of laptops inside the library they could loan out for an hour.
Yeah.
And so they started doing classrooms outside the public libraries, and the government of India got so excited that before the end of the pandemic, they'd funded 11 of her projects. Because suddenly poor people could go to school just by walking to the library, sitting on the lawn. Ingenious, right. And so in Europe, this similar kind of thing happened. The EU has this huge smart village funding program addressing, well, not only just what happens if the next pandemic happens, but how do we make sure people in rural and poor communities have access? Now, during the pandemic, a lot of people said, oh, telehealth, you don't need to go visit the doctor. Well, if you wanted an injection, doing that online, I know
that's
possible.
robbery to me. Unless it's like potentially psychological or like counseling.
Yeah.
That's okay, but even I think like in-person counseling is going to be better.
No, but in villages, often the nearest hospital is in the next town, and so if you fall sick, someone has to drive you, 2 hours to the pharmacy.
Can you make it there?
And you might not make it there. So, healthcare, when so much is being done online, I think is part of the questioning. City of Montreal is funding a Smart Village initiative. You know, what would we want? I could put you in touch with these other two people after we've demonstrated that you and I can collaborate a bit.
Definitely.
So the Smart Village thing is floating around in my head, and there I'm just aware I don't have the behavioral and psychological science background to
Can we turn
guide.
that off? Because I don't know if I'll be able to put some of the music on the channel, so I'll have to figure out how I can get some of that off. So I want to make sure we can have good. So the psychological background, what I've been researching recently is preschools and how that like affects like Black children, right? So one of the things that I've been learning is that throughout the lifespan, there are cognitive gaps like based on race. So like traditionally, Caucasian children, their cognitive ability like increases, right, throughout their lifespan. And when you look at Hispanic or African cultures, comparatively, they kind of cap like at a certain point, right? And that's based on like where they started, right? So like if a African or Caribbean or so-called Black child goes to preschool, it has a greater effect like on their outcome versus like a Caucasian child. So like when they go, it's not as much of a big deal, right? Because both of their parents will have like traditionally a larger number of parents will have degrees. They'll have a higher level of speaking.
But you're claiming that
the food.
This affects cognitive development.
Yeah.
Okay, so there I'm just going to inject something that's not very helpful, but you are the company you keep. So if your friends are all drug takers,
Yeah.
surprise, surprise.
Well, that's the thing. They're kids. They don't really have a choice. It's the family that they're born into.
Okay. The family that I was born into, my mother was in the English Army and an educated woman. Yeah, she worked in the kitchen too, but she was head of HR in UNESCO right after in the early 1950s. So in front of me, I had examples of how women could do things just as well as men that involve mathematics.
Definitely.
Okay, my father was in the American Army. And for some reason, I mean, I could go on and on, but they used to have these Thursday night chess nights where they'd invite friends and friends could invite friends of friends. And they'd end up with 22 people playing chess. But and at the time, I had no idea how unusual it was. There were Black people, white people, yellow people. There were painters, scientists, lawyers. You know, in most family, you never meet a lawyer until you're in jail. You know, you don't have any friends or even friends of friends that are educated as lawyers. Same with doctors. You know, if one of your family friends is a doctor, you can ask them questions way ahead of being sick.
Free advice,
and free advice,
Preventative.
and just, you know, and the mental relaxation of, you know, speaking your anxiety about why I'm coughing still and blah blah blah. And so yeah, I was, you know, you the family that you happen to grow up in. So one of my sons just had first grandchild about 2 months ago, and my you know biggest input is make sure he meets all types of people before he's a teenager. And one of the best students in this lab was Dr. Ivantina from Cameroon's West Africa. He got a PhD with me. He's now teaching in China. But one summer he got a summer job back in France in a private high school. And he was in the dormitories, you know, making sure that everything was all right, setting up the, and all those white French kids thought he was the waiter. What? You're doing a PhD? Waiters do PhDs?
Yeah.
I mean, all these 12-year-olds, oh yeah, you need something else, the black dude to go get it.
Yeah.
No, and he came back to me, he said, there's nothing I can do about it. I told him I have a PhD.
They're still associating him with being the waiter because he's helping to set up something. I mean, see, that's kind of one of the conversations that I was having earlier. Like, it's very, like you're saying, before they're teenagers, but up to 7, is like the really, really pivotal time for children. So like figuring out how they interact and see different cultures of people.
And that's where field trips, even walking around a neighborhood and seeing where the pharmacist actually lives.
Yeah.
What do you mean? They don't live in a rich people's house. They live in an apartment on the 18th floor.
Yeah.
So, my recommendation to my son is just make sure your baby meets all kinds of people. Yeah. And that it's, it's not strange when you meet the first Asian or something, and they don't
that's
shake
one
hands.
thing that's really different about Canada compared to here. So just because someone's like a certain skin tone, you have no idea like where they're from, because we have like what's called a Black Affinity Center at the University of Toronto. So I'm meeting different people that look like me, and one person will be from Senegal, one person will be from Rwanda, Congo, Somalia,
or even
Sudan,
Pakistan, right? I mean,
India.
In northern India, you get people that look Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
So one of the things we try and do in this lab is to make ourselves aware of our implicit biases.
Yes.
So I've taken the Harvard implicit bias test, and yes, when I think quickly, I'm racist and sexist.
Yeah.
When I think slowly, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But then, as soon as you're aware of that, there's a mental correction switch that goes into play. Yeah. And so, Evan Acuna, who's the lab manager now, came from a very poor family of indigenous American Indian background. And talk about imposter syndrome. I mean, sometimes he just says, I just feel I'm not educated enough. What do you mean? You just graduated from university, you got A plus. But also, in terms of the mission of this lab to bring different ways of knowing together, different cultures also bring different insights. Not always. Some cultures are ignorant, and that's okay.
They just don't know.
One of the exercises I started doing in the lab is I go shopping for snacks and cookies, and I tried to go to as many different kinds of shops in Dallas. And it's amazing. There is Ethiopian African, there's North African, there's Indian, there's, Mexican. Yeah. And one time I was in this African restaurant, I saw these wonderful fruits, and so I bought a bunch of them without talking to the shopkeeper. I got home and I tried to eat them.
Like, I don't know how to eat this, right?
They were vegetables, not fruits. So I looked them up on, you must cook it, otherwise it's dangerous.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, you grew up in a culture where...
So I did the same thing with the papaya.
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I supposed to eat this?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, you could boil it, like you can make a hamburger out of it, and like infuse meat sauce in it, I'm just like, I thought this was a fruit. And they're like, yeah, it is. I'm like, all right, that's different. So,
Okay, so for better or for worse, we've started a dialogue.
Definitely. Do you have a card too? I can, or I'll send you an email.
Wait, hold on a second. You might be lucky.
All right. And so for my business card, if you hold your phone over the back, that QR code will take you right there. And I have some of my research on my blog page.
Okay, hold on
channel.
Relax, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to make your life easy, I'll send you an email too right away. But so it's Roger. My middle initial is F, and I always mention that because if you Google Roger Malina, the more famous ones are not me, but Roger F. Malina.
When I'm looking at research, I see everyone's got like their abbreviation of their name to be different, that middle initial
Yeah,
or
you
something.
gotta design your name.
Yeah.
You know, it's silly, but
Yeah. Makes sense. Don't confuse me.
okay. So my most stable address is rogermalina@alum.mit.edu
So you went to MIT.
as an undergrad. And the reason I use my alumnus email address is because they have the best anti-phishing hacking software on the planet.
They better.
Because MIT is attacked every 2 minutes. My UTD one.
Boo to UTD for not having an alumni email. I'm getting kicked out of the server here like next month.
If you want me to get it extended, I can put in a request.
I'll try. Yeah, that would be awesome.
I mean, my problem is a lot of the students have all these files and folders and Box and all these Microsoft tools. Anyway, no, so I'll drop you an email once we end the conversation. You're behind, you know, clearly one of the things that's just got my interest is the behavioral science aspect. How can, you know, and there, I could go on for 10 more years. You know, we have this myth of human nature and human culture. You know, some things are natural, every human needs water. Yeah, right. Some things are human culture. You know, as we were saying, in the sauna, are you allowed to be naked or not?
Yeah.
But I think we've had a jolt to human nature with the pandemic and the move to spending a fraction of one's life online. And so human nature is evolving. And I think, you know, in a few 100,000 years, people that are able to survive online will dominate over people who aren't able to survive online. And well, then and you know, I'm semi-Darwinian, but you know, as things happen and terrible things happen, certain people survive and certain people do, and certainly
from the elements.
and certainly the people in poor neighborhoods and rural communities.
First to go.
You know, if you can't get medical health online, forget it. You know, you're just going to die like people did 400 years ago. And you know, you get
Something simple.
Something simple. Yeah, take aspirin. Yeah, the trick then, and okay, let me just share another concept with you. You know, I'm a social animal. I have a history of having lots of friends and colleagues and collaborators, and then we start projects and don't finish them.
Yeah.
But then one of my friends in California, Julian Gresser, came up with this phrase, well, you need to learn how to do evolutionary conversations.
Okay.
So how do you do a conversation so that you go back six months later and you're still discussing the same thing?
Yeah.
I mean, why bother? You know? How can the conversation evolve? So it could be after a few weeks of writing a dialogue, our attention might, we've talked about that already. How about we talk about this? And then the conversation evolves. And it is frightening when he made this observation to me. I have all these wonderful online people, and there we are just strutting and arguing about the same stuff we did 6 months ago, and that's true in online life. It's not, you know, when you go out to parties with people, you just keep joking about the favorite music and have the same conversation over and over, which is great for psychological reassurance or something. But if you want to solve problems in the world, that's not the, you know.
So that's what I like about this dynamic is like I'm like going to still be learning, right? So I'm
Yeah.
still learning new things and taking classes I've
So
never
am I.
taken before. And we're not in the same field, so like I'll be able to kind of tell you about what I'm working on, and you'll be able to tell me about what you're working on, and we can figure out like
And
how
then,
that comes
then you
together.
can look at they're the metaphors. It's sometimes to get where you want to go, you have to come diagonally, not on the quickest route.
Yeah.
And
That's good. It's definitely really great talking to you. I really appreciate you.
oh, no, but this this is what I'm paid to do.
Yeah.
And my hope is that something will just pop out of that has traction.
Yeah.
And there, I'll put you in. We're trying to build this smart village around the smart village concept with Tommy Ayala in Montreal, Tomas Londoño in Colombia, me. But okay, good. I think your cell phone stopped recording.
Oh, did it?
Well,
Yeah, it's giving up. All right.